Archive 466. The flight that never returned. Former classification: Restricted Dimensional Anomalies Division. Current status: declassified for historical review. December 5th, 1945. Humans remember that date because 5 military aircraft departed from a naval air station in Florida for what should have been a routine training exercise. None of them returned. The rescue aircraft sent a search for them disappeared as well. No wreckage was ever conclusively identified. No distress signal explained what happened. Only fragments of increasingly confused radio transmissions remained. Naturally, humanity created theories. The Bermuda Triangle became famous. Magnetic anomalies were proposed. Secret weapons, time travel, extraterrestrial abductions, even underwater civilizations received occasional blame. For reasons that still escape me, humans have always preferred extraordinary explanations over administrative ones. In this particular case, they were only half wrong. The region you call the Bermuda Triangle was indeed of considerable interest to several non-human civilizations long before your species learned to navigate the Atlantic. Not because it contained a portal, not because it concealed an ancient alien base, and certainly not because ships were routinely vanishing into another universe. Those stories were far more imaginative than reality. The actual installation, hidden beneath the ocean floor, belonged to a scientific consortium operating under authorization from the Galactic Union. Officially, it was known as Oceanographic Monitoring Station Sigma-17. I can already sense the disappointment. No secret laboratories, no invasion fleet, no experimental weapons, just scientists, an alarming number of sensors, and enough paperwork to discourage even the most determined inspector. The station had only one assignment: observe. For centuries, its instruments had recorded subtle gravitational fluctuations that appeared exclusively within a relatively small region of the Western Atlantic. The phenomenon was extraordinarily rare. Entire decades would pass without producing a single meaningful reading. Whenever it did appear, it lasted only fractions of a second before disappearing again. Nothing ever crossed it. Nothing interacted with it. No measurable energy escaped from it. Most researchers considered it little more than an interesting mathematical curiosity. As is often the case with scientific curiosities, they become significantly more interesting after they destroy something. The station itself never attempted to manipulate these anomalies. Quite the opposite. Galactic law explicitly prohibited any experiment intended to stabilize dimensional distortions. That regulation existed for excellent reasons. Long before humanity discovered agriculture, several civilizations had attempted controlled dimensional transit. The results ranged from disappointing to catastrophic. One expedition successfully transported an unmanned probe. Unfortunately, the probe returned several weeks before it had been launched. The committee responsible for explaining the accounting records required almost 80 years to complete its report. Another civilization succeeded in opening a stable dimensional corridor. The corridor remained perfectly functional. Its destination did not. Entire research facilities vanished from observable reality without leaving debris, radiation, or even gravitational signatures. Following incidents such as these, the Union adopted a remarkably simple policy. Do not experiment with dimensional boundaries. Observe them, study them, publish papers about them, argue endlessly during conferences. But under absolutely no circumstances should anyone attempt to interfere. Oceanographic Monitoring Station Sigma-17 followed those regulations meticulously. Its equipment was entirely passive. Nothing aboard the station possessed enough power to create a dimensional event. The instruments merely measured naturally occurring distortions and transmitted the data to research institutes many light years away. It was considered one of the safest assignments in the entire monitoring network. Predictably, it was assigned to Sector 47-9S. I should have recognized the warning immediately. By that time, I had already spent several years observing humanity. Our analysts still described your civilization as technologically primitive, strategically insignificant, and scientifically predictable. Experience suggested otherwise. Sector 47-9S had developed an unfortunate reputation inside the agency. Assignments intended to be routine rarely remained that way for long. Equipment malfunctioned. Meteorites ignored probability. Unauthorized sightings multiplied without explanation. And humans possessed an extraordinary talent for arriving at precisely the wrong place during precisely the wrong cosmic event. The official statistical models insisted this should have been impossible. Humanity, as usual, failed to consult the statistical models. On the morning of December 5th, 1,945 every safeguard functioned exactly as designed. Every regulation had been followed. Every instrument reported normal operation. No alarms were active. No experiments were underway. Nothing whatsoever suggested that the station was about to become the center of one of the greatest unsolved disappearances in human history. Then, approximately 15 million kilometers away, the sun decided to conduct an experiment of its own. Part 2. The incident. The solar event itself was not unusual. Stars produce eruptions. Radiation travels through space. Magnetic fields fluctuate. Every civilization that survives long enough learns to respect this simple fact. What made December 5th, 1945 extraordinary was not the solar flare. It was its timing. The burst of charged particles reached Earth's magnetic field, while oceanographic monitoring station Sigma-17 was conducting one of its scheduled calibration cycles. The calibration happened automatically every 18 local days. No one paid much attention to it. It had completed successfully more than 12,000 times. There was no reason to believe the 12,001st attempt would be any different. The station's instruments were designed to measure microscopic distortions in space-time with extraordinary precision. To accomplish this, they generated an equally microscopic reference field, a controlled gravitational echo so weak that even our own vessels could barely detect it. Under normal conditions, the echo simply reflected the surrounding geometry of space. The computers compared the reflected signal with the expected mathematical model, corrected minor sensor drift, and the calibration ended. Routine, predictable, thoroughly uninteresting, until the solar flare arrived. The additional electromagnetic energy was insignificant by astronomical standards. Unfortunately, the universe rarely consults engineering manuals. The reference field resonated with one of the naturally occurring distortions beneath the Atlantic. For the first, and to this day only, time in recorded history, the anomaly did something it had never done before. It became stable. Not permanently, only for a few seconds. But in physics, a few seconds can be an eternity. The scientists inside Sigma-17 immediately noticed something was wrong. Their instruments were no longer observing the anomaly. They were interacting with it. The lead physicist ordered an emergency shutdown. The computers obeyed. Or more accurately, half of them obeyed. The primary control system initiated a complete power reduction. The backup safety system interpreted the sudden loss of signal as a sensor failure and attempted to compensate by increasing field stability. Neither computer was malfunctioning. Both were following procedure. Unfortunately, they were following different editions of the same procedural manual. The discrepancy had been noted during an administrative review nearly 30 years earlier. Updating the documentation had been assigned to another department. The other department was still reviewing the request. For approximately 11 seconds, two perfectly functional safety systems argued with one another using physics instead of paperwork. The anomaly expanded. Not dramatically, only a few hundred meters across. But that happened to be enough. At that exact moment, Flight 19 entered the affected airspace. 5 aircraft, 14 men, flying directly through the center of a phenomenon that no civilization had ever intentionally created. The pilots noticed the effects immediately. Their radio transmissions have survived. Historians often describe them as confused. Our investigators reached a different conclusion. The pilots were reporting their observations with remarkable accuracy. Their compasses no longer agreed. The ocean looked unfamiliar. Landmarks appeared to occupy impossible positions. The horizon itself seemed incorrect. One pilot repeatedly insisted that nothing looked right. He was not suffering from panic. He was describing reality. Inside the stabilized anomaly, space had ceased to behave according to conventional geometry. Distance remained measurable. Direction did not. North still existed. It simply no longer pointed toward the same destination. Imagine opening a map and discovering that every road still connects 2 cities, but none of the cities occupy the places where they should. That is the closest approximation our mathematicians have managed. The formation attempted to regroup. The flight leader ordered heading corrections. Each correction produced results that contradicted every instrument aboard the aircraft. Fuel continued to burn. Engines continued to operate. Aerodynamics remained perfectly normal. Only space itself had become unreliable. Then the anomaly reached its maximum stability. For a fraction of a second, every sensor aboard Sigma-17 reported values that should have been physically impossible. The distortion did not tear open. It folded. Not through space. Not through time. Across something our physics describes only imperfectly, even today. The 5 aircraft disappeared. Not explosively. Not violently. Simply ceased to occupy our universe. The anomaly collapsed almost immediately afterward. The ocean returned to normal. Earth's magnetic field stabilized. The calibration systems shut themselves down. Silence filled the control room. At first, the scientists assumed the aircraft had crashed. Emergency drones were deployed. Long-range scanners searched every cubic kilometer of ocean surrounding the event. Nothing. No debris. No fuel slick. No metallic fragments. No emergency beacons. Nothing. The search expanded. Hours became days. Days became weeks. Every conceivable explanation was investigated. Instrument failure, stealth technology, atmospheric plasma, unknown terrestrial phenomena. Each hypothesis failed for the same reason. The aircraft had not left evidence of destruction. They had left no evidence at all. Only much later, after comparing the sensor recordings with theoretical models that had been ignored for centuries, did one young physicist notice a detail everyone else had overlooked. The anomaly's signature did not match any known spatial displacement, nor any temporal displacement. It matched mathematical predictions from a controversial branch of dimensional cosmology that most universities considered speculative. The equations suggested something profoundly unsettling. Flight 19 had not traveled somewhere else. It had traveled somewhere that existed alongside everywhere else. Unfortunately, recognizing what had happened proved considerably easier than discovering how to undo it. To the best of our knowledge, no one has ever reproduced the phenomenon again. Part 3. The Search Beyond the Search. The investigation did not end when the anomaly collapsed. It had only begun. For the first several weeks, every available asset in Sector 47-9S searched the Atlantic. The operation remained classified, of course. Human naval vessels searched the surface. Our autonomous probes searched beneath it. Neither found anything. Eventually, someone inside the scientific directorate asked an uncomfortable question. What if we are searching in the correct location, but in the wrong universe? No one appreciated the suggestion. Not because it lacked merit, because it implied that the rescue operation had been impossible from the very beginning. The sensor recordings were examined again. Every equation was recalculated. Every assumption challenged. The conclusion was unanimous. The aircraft had not been destroyed. They had crossed into an adjacent reality, one remarkably similar to our own. Close enough that the laws of physics remained compatible. Different enough that no natural path back could be identified. The announcement was received with unusual silence. Scientists dislike admitting ignorance. Administrators dislike it even more. Over the centuries that followed, the Union funded no fewer than 23 independent research programs dedicated to understanding dimensional adjacency. Several remarkable discoveries emerged. We confirmed that parallel realities exist. We learned that some differ only by microscopic quantum events. Others diverge so dramatically that stars themselves occupy different regions of the sky. We even succeeded in detecting brief interactions lasting less than a billionth of a second. What we never achieved was another stable transition. To this day, the event of December 5th, 1945 remains the only verified macroscopic dimensional transfer ever recorded. It was never repeated. Not intentionally. Not accidentally. Some members of the research community considered this disappointing. The Department of Public Safety considered it excellent news. As for Flight 19, our theoretical models offered one final, unexpected comfort. The neighboring reality appeared to possess an Earth almost indistinguishable from your own. Its oceans, its atmosphere, its gravity, even its history seemed to differ only in subtle ways. If our calculations were correct, the pilots survived the crossing. They landed. They searched for answers. And eventually, like every explorer confronted with an unfamiliar world, they adapted. Perhaps they found people remarkably similar to those they had left behind. Perhaps they built new lives. Perhaps they spent years trying to convince others that they had once departed from a place called Earth, only to discover that everyone around them believed they were already there. History has never been kind to witnesses of impossible events. In that respect, their new universe may not have differed very much from this one. Naturally, the Cultural Containment Division still faced a considerable administrative problem. 14 military personnel had vanished. A rescue aircraft had disappeared shortly afterward. Governments expected explanations. The public demanded certainty. Unfortunately, certainty was the one resource we did not possess. Our instructions were therefore refreshingly familiar. Do not create a false narrative. Encourage uncertainty. The distinction is important. False explanations eventually collapse. Competing explanations tend to survive indefinitely. So the agency quietly assisted where appropriate. Navigation errors received attention. Magnetic anomalies became popular. Unusual weather reports were allowed to circulate. Journalists discovered missing details. Writers proposed increasingly imaginative theories. Eventually, someone coined the expression, the Bermuda Triangle. We considered correcting the terminology. There are, in fact, several triangles in that region. The proposal was rejected on the grounds that geography was someone else's department. Over time, the legend became self-sustaining. Each new disappearance, whether ordinary or extraordinary, found its way into the same growing mythology. Humans accomplished what no intelligence service had ever managed. They buried one mystery beneath hundreds of others. I have often been asked whether the Bermuda Triangle truly hides an alien installation. The answer remains surprisingly uncomplicated. Yes, Oceanographic Monitoring Station Sigma 17 is still there. The station continues its observations. Its calibration software has undergone extensive revisions. The two competing procedural manuals have finally been consolidated into a single edition. After only 81 years of administrative review, I am told this was considered an impressive improvement. As for the dimensional anomaly, it has never appeared again. The censors still wait. The scientists still argue. The funding committees still complain. Some traditions are universal. Occasionally, young researchers ask whether Flight 19 might someday return. Science requires that we answer honestly. We do not know. The mathematics does not forbid it. Neither does it promise it. If those 14 pilots are still alive somewhere, beyond the boundary that briefly opened on that December afternoon, they may occasionally look toward the sky of their adopted world and wonder whether anyone ever discovered what happened to them. The answer is we did. We simply discovered it too late. And perhaps that is the greatest irony of the entire affair. For decades, humans searched the floor of the Atlantic for Flight 19. Meanwhile, some of the finest physicists in the Galactic Union spent centuries searching every equation they could devise. Neither search found what it sought. One looked beneath the ocean. The other looked beyond reality itself. Both continue. After all, hope, unlike dimensional anomalies, has proven remarkably easy to reproduce.